Lots of stink bombs are being thrown in this election, and we can expect it to get a lot nastier in these last 2 weeks. So how low can it go? Let's talk to two political fighters. Pat Buchanan's a political analyst at MSNBC, and Mark Green is president of Air America and author of the book Losing Our Democracy. I want you all to listen to something that Governor Palin said to some youngsters, I think they were second and third graders, about the job that she sees ahead of her as Vice President of the United States.
A vice president has a really great job because not only are they there to support the president's agenda, they're like the team member, the teammate to that president, but also they're in charge of the United States Senate. So if they want to, they can really get in there with the senators and make a lot of good policy changes that will make life better.
What do you make of that, Mark Green?
I'm afraid it's constitutionally ignorant. I actually held the office in New York called Public Advocate, where I presided over the city council. My only job was to vote in case of a tie. There never was one. In the Senate, of course, Vice President Cheney and his predecessors go to the Senate and they sit and preside and only vote in case of a tie. Nobody in the Senate asked Cheney his opinion. So even though Governor Palin was talking to second and third graders and, was obviously literally chronologically talking down, she got it totally wrong.
Mm-hmm. Pat, by the way, Mark Road, who runs Congress years ago, so I know what he's talking about. And I have to say, Pat, I'm not going to say anything more than that's wrong. The Vice President of the United States is only the presiding officer. If you read the Constitution, which the governor has not done, it simply says that your only role is to break a tie and to preside. She says she can get in there and pass policy and good policies. She has the notion that the Vice President of the United States, as presiding officer of the Senate, is somehow the majority leader, that she somehow has a legislative... Pat, you're laughing, and if it was anybody else, you'd be jumping on him like a vulture.
She's talking to second and third graders.
She's talking like a second grader.
Chris,
what did she mean?
What is this hostility to this woman?
No, what did she mean? Don't get into personal stuff here, Pat. What did she mean? She's up for Vice President of the United States.
My guess is she meant that she's going to work with the Republican caucus to try to change policy, kids, and make the country better. Clearly, Reid's going to run the Senate. He may have 60 votes. She ain't going to be able to do with it.
The Vice President of the United States is the legislative leader of the Senate?
Well,
Don't you have to be a senator?
She's the president of the Senate.
No, but she's not a senator.
No, she's the president of the Senate.
If you're not a senator, you're not a member of the Senate.
You're the president of the Senate.
What's her role?
The president of the Senate. You haven't read the Constitution.
Presides over the Senate. That's the only role. Has no role except to break ties.
Well, look, she's the president of the Senate of the United States.
We're not getting anywhere, Pat. You're saying she has a legislative role?
I'm saying she's the president of the Senate.
Does she have any legislative role?
Not unless she can get the Republicans and Democrats to work with her.
When in history has a vice president been given a legislative authority over the majority or the minority or any senator in the United States Senate?
She's talking to second graders.
Okay. Let me tell you why there's a serious question here. Because when she was talking to Katie Couric and answering questions, she talked in a language I've never heard about some flexibility within the Constitution, Mark, about some new authority for the vice president, which has never been understood before. Now, maybe this derives from the sense that the people around Dick Cheney have about the role of the vice president, but I have never heard anybody say the vice president has legislative authority of any kind or any consequence. It's extraordinary for her to teach people. She's got a teaching role. She's telling those kids something that's wrong. She's not talking down to them. She's giving them wrong information. The vice president of the United States has two roles: to succeed the president, if that's a necessity, and to preside over the Senate and break ties, and that's it. Under the Constitution. To argue that it has a legislative authority within the grasp of the vice presidency is unconstitutional. Am I right or wrong? You know, Pat knows it too.
I agree with you. The least problem with Sarah Palin is that she hasn't read and doesn't understand the Constitution. Pat's energetic reply notwithstanding, of course she's literally wrong. And when she said to Katie Couric, it may have been just a bad sentence structure, that I want to see more power to the vice president. This is after Cheney comes up with the theory of the unitary executive, where Bush and Cheney can incarcerate people without due process, no matter what the Constitution says. Worse is that Sarah Palin is an unqualified demagogue. When this week she said that she's glad to be in a small town because these are the pro-America areas of the country. By the way, I come from a rather big town called New York, which was the subject of a big attack because we represented America. So when she starts dividing the country into pro and anti-America, when she has played footsie with the secessionist party in Alaska, which literally is anti-American.
Let me stay on the topic here, Mark. And here's the topic. This, by the way, the straight was not talking to a second grader. She was doing a TV interview and referring to a question put to her by a second grader. So she was talking to adults, Pat, and she was giving misinformation, which, the Constitution clearly delineates the authority of these offices. Why would she get it wrong?
Here's what. Look, I sat at Camp David in a meeting with President Nixon and Spiro Agnew when Agnew had to get up and he was headed back to the Senate to break the tie vote on the MX missile. Right. And Nixon said, "You're going to vote the right way, aren't you?" And he said, "Let's negotiate about the family assistance plan." And everybody laughed and he went out. You break tie votes. You're the president of the Senate. You are not the majority leader. That's right, Chris. I don't know what you're making a big deal out of a woman.
I'm making a big deal about somebody.
She's talking to second graders.
She's trying to get elected. And she's not talking to second graders. It was a TV interview. She referred to a question put to her by a second grader. It was a TV interview. She was talking to us, Pat, about the role she seeks to fill. And she's wrong about the basic nature of the role.
Let me talk to the point about she being a demagogue.
Okay, you'd rather
say outrageous.
Well,
we've already talked about it. That is outrageous in Mark in this sense. When she says the real America, she's referring to Barack Obama out there in San Francisco saying, those people out there in middle Pennsylvania, they're bitter, they're bigoted because the world is
nice try, Pat. One second.
And she's saying we come from small towns, and she's not from New York City. I know that's a disadvantage to her, but she defends and protects where and who she came from.
Nice try, Pat.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
No, the facts are the facts. You haven't looked perhaps at her quote. 3 times she said, "I'm here in small town America. This is the real America." Nancy, whose last name is unpronounceable, Pfaffenhoff, from the McCain campaign, said, Virginia is wobbling but the real Virginia is for McCain. This, Pat, from McCarthy to McCain, this mindset of pro and anti-America, and Congresswoman Bachmann that Chris, of course, was on with last Friday night, this is a mindset, I'm afraid it reflects yours sometimes, and it doesn't work in a year when the fear is not of communism, but of the economy.
All right, let me respond to that. John Murtha went up to my mom's hometown and said this district is full of racists and rednecks. John Lewis says, McCain and Palin are like George Wallace. They're appealing to the worst insect. Media in this country is saying the only way McCain can win is something called the Bradley effect. In other words, closet white racists in America lying out there. That is as anti-American as somebody calling liberals communists.
Okay, let's go through the latest statements by public officials. Robin Hayes of North Carolina has said to warm up a crowd on Saturday, this weekend, liberals hate real Americans that work and accomplish and achieve and believe in God. Liberals hate real Americans. Here's the latest from Mel Martinez, a senior Republican senator from Florida. Here's what he said. Where I come from, where I was raised, they tried wealth redistribution. We don't need that here. That's called socialism, communism, not Americanism. So we're throwing terms around here, the Republicans are. Communism, socialism, consorting with terrorists, anti-American. This is new.
That's right.
Pat, these labels are being thrown because John McCain is 14 points down.
Correct.
That's why these labels
they shouldn't be calling. Keep quiet a second, Mark. It's to me.
Okay,
Look,
I'm sorry.
They shouldn't be calling these folks communists. They shouldn't be calling liberals anti-Americans. They shouldn't be calling Congress anti-American. It's legitimate with Reverend Wright and Flager and that other clown out there. But also, liberals should not be saying this is a closet racist country, and the only way that McCain's going to win.
First of all, Jack Murtha is not a liberal. He's not a liberal.
But liberals are saying, what about this Bradley effect garbage that you all are putting out?
He's talking about his concern that a certain percentage of the people in his district
are racist.
No, that wouldn't vote for a black candidate for president.
Why does he use the word racist? And
because he corrected himself afterwards.
Well, so did Robin Hayes correct himself.
Chris,
it's kind of fresh.
The comment, he apologized.
Okay, well, let's move on. No, because I think these comments are coming more and more in one direction. Because I'm looking at on Friday, Bachmann goes after anti-Americans. On Saturday, this guy goes after, say, liberals hate real Americans. Today he says, look. there's a flurry of anti-democratic comments late because of this rise in the poll for Barack. Isn't that what's going on?
I don't disagree with that. What caused John Lewis to make that gutter statement?
Well, it's not
John McCain.
Okay, John Lewis is a great guy.
Okay, may I comment?
Robin Hayes may be a great guy too.
Okay, we have gotten.
And Michelle Bachmann may be a great gal.
Pat can
First of all, I am very suspicious. Let me tell you what I don't like to do is get into motive, because you can never figure out another person's motive. It's impossible. When Rush Limbaugh the other day said that General Powell supports Barack Obama because he's black, how does he know?
Well, because
you don't know.
Powell said it himself.
No. Pat, you're wrong if you start getting this is tribal. You're wrong. You're wrong to do this. You're wrong to assume that he's voting black any more than you're attacking someone.
He said it himself. He said it's not the only reason or the decisive reason, but he will be transformational.
Said it was the reason.
Well, he was mistaken if it's the only reason.
Okay, that's what we're arguing about.
We agree on
General Powell said it was one of the reasons.
Pat, you and I agree on 90% of this stuff. We'll get back to it later. Mark, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Mark.
Pat does his job here, which is to speak for a point of view which has been discredited lately.